Hey everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 415 of our YouTube channel and podcast, and I could not be more excited to continue sharing with you guys personal finance topics that I think could be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. Today is another Fundamental Friday, right? And I think fundamental to money in general is our emotions, right? So I think that something that would be useful to talk about would be anxiety in your finances, because I know so many people struggle with stress and anxiety around money. And so I want to talk about how we can deal with this and ultimately alleviate the stress and anxiety that comes with our own financial situation, and hopefully get us to a more healthy place when it comes to our finances, where we can, just really thrive in our own financial lives. So stick around for a discussion of all that and more in today's episode. Before we get started though, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. Then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions, and you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who's watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. Now, maybe you're like me, and maybe you worry about things a lot. And as much as I know that I shouldn't, and as much as I try to combat my worrying and my anxiety and my fear, many times it rears its ugly head, right? And being anxious about things can make me physically ill. It can make me extremely emotional. It can really change my way of thinking from a very rational one to a very emotional one, right? To one that's very pragmatic and thoughtful, to one that is kind of off the wall, kind of just based on how I am feeling at the time. And that's not a healthy way to deal with your finances, and that's not a healthy way to think about your own financial life, right? I know that many of you out there, whether it is being saddled with tons of debt, whether it is having family members that are not on board with your financial plan or the way that you're handling your finances, whether it's taking losses in financial markets, whatever, right? Many of you deal with financial anxiety. Many of you deal with stress around your money. Now, thankfully, money is not one place that I have tons of anxiety. There are moments in my life, and I think for everybody, right, where there's a little more stress than others when it comes to your finances. But to be anxious and to be stressed are two totally different things. Yes, there's some overlap, but anxiety definitely differs from stress, right? Anxiety has a lot more to do with fear, right? It has a lot more to do with this dread and uneasiness, right? Anxiety, it occurs in stressful situations, right? Stress is that feeling of something being heavy and something being really on your mind and on your heart and on top of you, and really being pressure. But anxiety takes that pressure to another level and really makes you scared of what may happen if certain things turn out in a certain way, right? And so we think of our finances in that way sometimes too, right? We're very anxious about what may occur in our financial lives. And I want to help you deal with that. I want to help you deal with that anxiety, and I want to help you to do so with just some tips, just some things that you can do that I think can be helpful when it comes to your financial stresses, your financial anxieties, however you want to define them. So first thing that I think you can do is just know that you are not the only person who deals with financial stresses and anxieties, right? When we feel alone, our stress increases, right? If you're stressed about money, it's important to know that you're not alone. According to the American Psychological Association, money issues are a top source of stress in the lives of 7 in 10 adults, right? There are significant increases in stress related to the economy and work during the pandemic. 70% of people in May 2020 were worried about the economy relative to August of 2019, less than a year prior. Only 46% were worried about the economy. Similarly, 70% in May 2020 were worried about work. And in August of 2019, only 64% were worried about work, right? But this thought of knowing that you're not alone, this may seem very, very simple, but it is huge, right? And I'll give you this own anecdotal evidence from my own life. Something that I have stresses and anxiety about is the fact that, those of you who don't know, I'm a fourth-year PhD student in finance, right? I'm getting a PhD in finance, and I have a friend who came in to the program same time I did. We've gone through everything together. And I'm thankful that we've gone through everything together, because it has allowed me to do this, to know that I'm not alone. Because there are times when I'm isolated and I'm doing my own work, and I can really be hard on myself, or really think that things aren't going to work out correctly. I can be very fearful, and things can seem overwhelming, right? But knowing that I'm not alone, talking to my friend, getting some assurances about where he's at, what he's doing, how he's thinking about things, can really bring me into a better place. And just knowing that, maybe some of my anxieties are unrealistic, or may not be based in fact, but a lot more in just irrational emotion, right? And it's helpful to know that somebody else is right there with you. Somebody else is going through the same things that you're going through, right? And it helps you to be calm. It helps you to deal with some of your anxieties. And so I think in my own life, it is 100% true that this can happen, but it can also help with your finances, because there are so many people out there who are dealing with horrendous financial situations. And there are some people whose financial situations aren't as bad as they're making them out to be. But just knowing that there are other people around who are worrying about the same things, who are thinking about the same things, and just knowing that you are not unique. I say this all the time to myself, and I don't think that it's a negative thing, even though it may sound negative. But I tell myself, I'm like, you're not unique. You're not different, right? There are others who go through similar things. And that's calming to me. It's calming to know that I'm not just so insanely different, that my problems are, not any different than anyone else's, right? And I think that's important to remember, that there are other people dealing with the same things, and getting around other people who are dealing with the same things can help you to deal with those exact same things, which can be very, very valuable. And the second tip that I have is to just take a time out, right? When you're anxious, your mind can really spin out of control. And boy, am I'm guilty of this, right? I let my mind just go and think of every single little dumb thing that may potentially occur. And there's no logical basis for those things happening, right? My mind just spins and spins and spins. Now, it's important to take a break and clear your head, okay? Building in some activities to initiate a relaxation response is important to your mental health. And I think that there are certain things that are just fantastic. Something that I do, and again, this is not financial stress, this is just stress and anxiety in general. When I'm, working on research for my PhD or whatever, and I'm just, I've been working hard or whatever, and I've been kind of anxious or stressed or whatever, something I like to just get up and go take a walk, right? Just get up, and if I'm on campus, I'll get up and I'll just walk around campus, right? And just take a walk and just clear your head. Don't think about anything but walking and your surroundings and all that type of stuff. And don't think about work. Don't think about the thing that's on your mind. In the same way, right? Don't think about your money, right? Don't be stressed about your money. Build in activities. Working out, I think, is a great thing too. Going for a walk, you could call that some exercise, but more than anything, that's just a clearing your mind mechanism for me. Doing something different, get around, get up, moving around, whatever. But working out's also great because you can clear your mind and you can kind of release your stress very, very literally, right? So you may take a walk, you may listen to music, you may read a book, right? Reading a book, I think, can be very useful too, as long as you can focus on the book. I'm also a person who I can be reading a book and then my mind can go somewhere and I can be 4 more pages deep into that book and go, oh, crud, did I miss 4 pages because I've been thinking about whatever it may be. So that sometimes can be not quite as valuable. And then sometimes it can be as easy as just dealing with your breathing, right? Doing some deep breathing exercises can help you to calm down. Now, I think that taking a time out is useful, but I don't think it is going to alleviate all of your financial anxieties, simply because a lot of your financial anxieties are likely rooted in either lack of knowledge or lack of action or lack of clarity, lack of completion, whatever it may be. And a lot of that is going to take you being very direct and working on things that need to be worked on, right? So even though we can think about, okay, we're not alone, other people are in the same situation, and we can take a time out, we can breathe, we can go for a walk, we can work out, we can do whatever to kind of ease our mind. There may still be very real things that there are to be dealt with, right? And so it's not like everything's just going to go away because you do those couple of things. So I have more tips, obviously, right? So the next thing I think that's important is that we avoid catastrophic thinking, okay? So some catastrophic thinking may be like, I have credit card debt, I'm a failure at everything, or I lost my job, I'm going to be poor forever, right? They're just exaggerations, right? We think in a way that is exaggerating what reality is, right? Yeah, you may be in credit card debt, but guess what? You can pay off your debt, right? Yes, you may be out of work right now, but guess what? You can get a better job and make more money and be more financially successful, right? When your finances feel out of control, it's easy to slip into catastrophic thinking where we ruminate irrationally about what's likely to happen and who we are. These exaggerated thoughts create stressful emotions. To minimize the negative impact of irrational worries, you need to keep things in perspective. This is where the next tip can be quite helpful. And the next tip kind of pairs with that tip. So we're going to avoid catastrophic thinking, but the next tip is think about the worst case scenario. You may say, well, how can I avoid catastrophic thinking if I'm going to think about the worst case scenario? Now, while you're not likely being threatened by the fact that your financial situation is what it is, you may have a horrible financial situation, but it's not life-threatening, right? But the stress related to it can be, right? So this exercise, thinking about the worst case scenario, right? Thinking about the worst thing that could happen, it helps you to face your fears straight on, 100%. Right? I've done this in my own life, right? What is the worst outcome? What is the worst thing that could absolutely go on here? And if you can live with that worst thing, then things aren't as bad as you thought they would be, right? Your catastrophic thinking really wasn't, all that it was cracked up to be. Even though that a worst case scenario may be a bad thing, if you could live with it, if you could work through it, then you could really move in a positive direction. So taking a hard look at the worst case scenario has the paradoxical impact of lowering your anxiety. It's a form of exposure therapy that can help you to keep things in perspective. Because I just know in my own life, very, very often, the worst case, right? The worst thing that could happen based on a decision that I make or something that I do is not near what I crack it up to be, right? So what this is doing is you're imposing logical thought into irrational emotion, right? You're imposing a thought that is actually based in fact, right? Instead of based on emotion. And very often, if we can base things in fact and real things that are going on and get rid of some of the emotion, then we can get rid of some of the anxieties, which is so, so valuable, right? So take some time to think it through. For example, if you lost your job, what would happen next, right? If you had to move in with your family or friends, then what would happen? Keep following the chain of worst possible outcomes. For most people, fleshing out the details leads them to realize that the situation, while uncomfortable and possibly inconvenient, is not life-threatening, and that they could eventually get back on track. So I think with your finances, right, you may have the thought, like I said a moment ago, I have credit card debt, I'm a failure at everything, right? Well, then you may think, okay, well, what's the worst case scenario of having credit card debt? Worst case scenario is credit card debt is too large. You have to file bankruptcy. Okay, well, bankruptcy only hurts you for a finite amount of time. You can always turn your life around financially. Or maybe it's not even that in your situation. Maybe it's you just make minimum payments forever. Well, yeah, that's not a good thing, but there are far worse things that can occur. So you're not a failure at everything just because you're in debt. But there are absolutely things that you can do to get yourself back on track, because the worst case scenario is just not as bad as you're making it out to be. Then another tip for dealing with your financial anxiety is that you need to ask for help, right? Your anxiety soars when you lack confidence in your ability to face a challenge, right? This is common in the realm of personal finance, where many of us lack basic financial literacy. And I think this is huge, right? It's huge to have knowledge about something, have understanding about something, because if you aren't as knowledgeable, you aren't as understanding, you're kind of in the dark about things, that can make you very anxious. That can stress you out, right? Because then you're like, okay, I'm being forced into a place where I have to do something that I don't really know that much about. But if you know more, then you can act in a more logical way, right? You're not dealing in emotions as much as you're dealing in logic and a process and actually working, through things that are based in fact, right? If your financial anxiety is causing you significant distress or making it difficult for you to manage your life, you may benefit from getting help from somebody. So you may want to work with a mental health professional or a financial planning professional that can help you cope with your anxiety and make progress on tackling your financial challenges. And that really goes back to the first tip, right? It really goes back to knowing that you're not alone. Because if you work with somebody on your mental health, right? If you go to a therapist or whatever, you have to know that other people go too. Or you have to know that you're not the only person that goes to that individual to get help. Or if you go to a financial professional, you go to a financial advisor, financial coach, whatever, and try to work with them, then you must also know that there are other people who are working with financial coaches, financial professionals, right? And are trying to work out their money issues as well. So that can really help you to ease your anxiety on multiple fronts. Now, all the tips to this point I think are fantastic, but there's a tip that I think is the biggest, is the most important when it comes to dealing with your financial anxiety, right? And this is, have a plan, right? And you may say, well, a plan is just going to create anxiety in me. Maybe the thought of putting together a financial plan for yourself is daunting, right? But really, you don't have to put together a financial plan for yourself at all, because I've already done that for you, right? And I've shared it with you in the form of the financial action plan. We'll talk about that here as we go, right? But having a plan and executing that plan allows you to stay rooted in fact and not emotion. And it allows you to stay rooted in what's real and not what's irrational and fake, right? And it's going to help you to get over some of your fears and face some things that you need to face head on, right? Because if you're constantly dealing in a place where you just don't know what to do, you don't know where to go, you don't know what's next, you don't know what the ramifications of this, that, or the other are, and you don't know what's best for you financially, then of course you're going to be scared. Of course you're going to be lost. Of course you're going to be afraid, right? But if instead you say, well, I know what I'm going to do, and I know what's next, and I know what the next step is, and I know if this happens, that I'm going to do this, and I know if this happens, that I'm going to do this. That can alleviate so much anxiety. It goes back to my thought on just having the knowledge and having the understanding of where you're going to go and what you're doing, and having a clear path can really cause you to have a lot of peace, right? It can allow you to lose some of this anxiety that is maybe weighing you down in a very real way. So let's talk about the financial action plan and how it can help you to deal with your financial anxiety. So first and foremost, first thing I tell you to do in the financial action plan is I tell you to have a unique monthly budget. If you have a budget, you know where your money's coming from and you know where your money is going, or you have a plan for where your money's going. So that takes away all of the ambiguity about like, am I going to have enough money to do X, Y, Z? You know, right? You made the budget. You know if you have enough money to do X, Y, Z, and you know that if you don't end up having the money to do X, Y, Z, then you broke the budget. That was on you. That was your fault. And that may create emotions of its own, but you ultimately know that you were the culprit and you did something that led to some outcome, right? So budgeting allows you to take back control of your income and your expenses in a very real way. I think that is huge when it comes to alleviating some of the anxiety you have with your money. Then I say, just have a starter 1 month of household expenses emergency fund. Now, this is valuable and it helps to alleviate financial anxiety because a lot of times we're worried about not having money in the bank, right? I don't have any money, so if something bad were to happen, then what, right? Then what's the next thing? And so just starting this process of actually having some money saved up for emergencies, for negative things to occur and us be able to pay for them without having to go into debt or whatever else can really help us to alleviate some of our worries, some of the things that we're stressed about, whether it be healthcare costs or getting into a car wreck or whatever, right? We can alleviate some of that by having some of those savings there, or maybe it's losing a job, whatever, right? So we can have a little bit of a buffer there to begin with. And the third part of the financial action plan is to take the employer match on your 401k, 403b, TSP, whatever it is, if you have a match offered to you, right? Now, can this help you to deal with anxiety? Well, some people are actually anxious in their finances about not having enough when they retire, which is a very real worry to have, right? It's a very real thought to have, is that, hey, I might not have enough money when I retire. I understand that. And so if that's on your list, if that's something that you worry about, then investing and having a match where you're getting free money when you invest can help you to alleviate that, right? Because in this situation, not only are you putting away money, but that money's being matched up to a certain amount. So you're able to multiply your money almost immediately when you put it away. So that can help with the thought of, I'm not going to have enough money. Well, it's far more likely that you'll have money if you're actually putting money away and getting free money in return as well. And then the fourth part of the financial action plan, I think, is probably the biggest with dealing with financial anxiety, because you talk about facing your fears head on. The fourth part forces you to do so, because I'm forcing you, or I'm telling you, or I'm leading you into getting out of all of your consumer debt, right? Because this is the scary part, right? The scary part is you have credit card debt. The scary part is you have student loans. The scary part is you have auto loans. The scary part is you have payday loans that have to be paid off. And in order to pay them all off, you have to look them straight in the face and take responsibility for them. And then not only take responsibility, pay them off. Actually give the people their money back, right? Be intense about doing that. And if you get this done, if you get this fourth part of the financial action plan done, then you don't ever have to worry about the fact that you owe somebody money again, right? You can look and go, I don't owe anybody anything. You can live with freedom, right? You can live financially free and not have to worry that there's going to be somebody calling you or knocking at your door or whatever, asking you to make a payment, or somebody telling you that this payment's late or that payment's late or whatever. You won't have to worry about it because you do not have any debt. So I can help you with your financial anxieties, because what do you really have to worry about if you don't have to make any payments on anything? Not much, right? Making money, investing it for your future, doing the things you want to do. That makes life a lot simpler when it comes to your finances. Now, the fifth part of the financial action plan goes back to the second. When we're building up an emergency fund, having emergency savings, we talked about how that helps alleviate financial anxiety. So having that bigger pile of money there obviously is going to create more of a buffer, both literally and emotionally, between you and bad things that can happen in your financial life. Then the sixth part of the financial action plan is investing at least 15% of your income for your future, right? So whether that's your retirement accounts, your brokerage accounts, for your kids, for all these different types of things. And that can, again, help you deal with this anxiety that I'm not going to have enough, or that inflation is going to eat away at the value of my money, or my kids are going to have to go into student loans because they can't afford school or whatever. You can start doing things in that place that will allow you to alleviate some of those stresses, anxieties, worries, because you're actually doing something. You're actually being proactive about your future, right? And much of our financial anxiety comes from the uncertainty of the future. And so if we're actually doing things that are going to make our future better, then those worst case scenario outlooks that we had previously become less bleak, right? And that catastrophic thinking becomes less bleak, and maybe, isn't as catastrophic, isn't as bad anymore because we are actually doing things to make positive outcomes out of our future. Then the seventh part of the financial action plan, which is concurrent with the sixth, is to pay off your home, pay off your mortgage, right? And when you pay off your mortgage, that's going to create this freedom about you. It's going to decrease financial anxiety because I was talking about earlier, owing people money. Well, this is the biggest debt that you'll ever take out, and the biggest debt that's going to, hang over you. And you get that thing paid off, then you really don't owe anyone anything, and your largest expense is gone. And so now you have more cash flow, and you can deal with more things as they may occur in your financial life. Then the eighth part is to max everything out investment wise, and that goes along with the sixth part. And then the ninth part is to give generously. And if there's anything in my financial life that I can tell you decreases my worry about having money and decreases worry about my own situation, is to be generous, right? Because you can find people and organizations and situations that need money, right? And that need, your donations, and that can use them for very, very good things. And you find that, hey, I don't need this money as bad as I thought I did. Right? This money doesn't mean near as much to me as it means to these people, or as it means to this individual, or as it means to this situation, right? I can make far bigger impacts with my money by giving than I can by doing anything that I'm doing in my own life for myself, right? So that can really help you to reduce your anxiety because it kind of goes back to that thought process of knowing that you're not alone, knowing that you're not in it by yourself. And even more than that, not that you're not just in it by yourself, that there are other people who have worse anxieties, worse problems, worse issues that really need where you just feel like you do based on the fact that you're worrisome and full of anxiety. Okay, so that's how the financial action plan, I think, really helps you to carve out your financial life in a way that will decrease anxiety, decrease stress, and make you as financially free as possible, which is my goal. I tell you guys all the time, that's my goal. Making you the most financially free that you can possibly be, to where you can spread your wings and fly financially, and not be held down by debt payments, not be held down by emergent things that may happen, or whatever else, that you can just move forward and have options and have choices with your financial life and not be constantly worried. Because I know finances are worrisome. I know that they are very much tied to our emotions. Our ability to pay for things, our ability to live the life that we want to live, is very much tied to our emotions. But I don't want you to get so bogged down in the emotional part of it that you aren't making good, logical decisions. So stick with some of these tips, have a plan, know that you're not alone, right? Take a time out, breathe, right? Do some things that will take your mind off of the worst things. Avoid catastrophic thinking, right? Take into account what the worst case scenario would be. And a lot of times you're going to realize it's not that bad, and then ask for help. If you need help, then by all means, reach out to people who can help you and that can increase your understanding of finances, your financial situation, and make it to where it's not all that worrisome after all. So thanks for watching this video. If you could, go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video. Leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan. And that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. Then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan, keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions. And you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who's watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. So tune in Monday as I continue talking about personal finance topics that I think can be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. So thanks for tuning into this episode of Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.